Today's episode is brought to you by the GG Button. Go to ggbutton.com and use the new coupon code we have for you, 1PVS2P at checkout. Hit that GG button to call out a good game or to troll your friends. Again, use coupon code 1PVS2P at checkout to save 10%.
Thanks to our friends at the GG Button for supporting our podcast, and thanks to you, the listener, for supporting us.
On today's episode, we're discussing our experience with Blizzard's hot new multiplayer shooter, Overwatch. It's Tuesday, May 31st, 2016, and you're listening to the 1P vs. 2P podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray. So in lieu of our normal show format, and it was relatively slow news week, we decided we're going to talk about a game that both Ryan and I have been playing this whole past week. It's Overwatch. So I've been playing it on PS4. Ryan's been playing it on PC. Let's give a little bit of background about what this game is before we get into our impressions of it. So it was officially released on Tuesday, May 24th, but in some areas, servers were live as of Monday, May 23rd, including very late here in the US, but officially worldwide, it went live May 24th. So Overwatch, it was unveiled at BlizzCon 2014. A lot of hype surrounding this game leading up to this release last week because of the very, very successful multiplayer beta that was available to the public for free. It seems like it's the largest beta ever that I can remember off the top of my head. And just a little bit about the history behind Overwatch. A lot of the assets and ideas for this game came from a canceled project by Blizzard called Titan. That was an MMORPG they had been working on for many years, but the game ended up being scrapped completely, and they decided to go in this new direction to create a feature-filled, full retail game in Overwatch. So this time, it's a team-based first-person multiplayer shooter. It's also noteworthy because Overwatch is Blizzard's latest new franchise since StarCraft in 1998, which, if you take a step back, that's pretty incredible considering all the games they have put out since then. A lot of the IPs that you've seen, like the Warcraft series and Diablo, those have been around for a long time. Heroes of the Storm makes use of all their existing characters from all those franchises. So it's noteworthy that we're seeing a lot of new characters in a brand new game in a sphere that Blizzard hasn't entered before, the shooter genre. So let's get into it now at this point. Let's get into what we like about this game, what our experiences have been both on console and PC. Ryan, you've been playing it on PC. How is it so far? Are you finding it hard to compete with those people who have been using mice and keyboard? I know you're a traditional controller guy.
I'm not finding it hard to control at all, and that probably speaks to the way this game is balanced and kind of the pace of the game. So I'm playing on PC, like you said, but I'm playing with a Xbox 360 controller, and I'm not finding myself that disadvantaged. I think the PC is probably the most popular version because this is a Blizzard game, but I think a lot of people bought the PC version because they like playing shooters with mouse and keyboard. But it seems like that's really only an advantage for people who play the sniper characters. So that's Widowmaker and Hanzo. Everybody else kind of controls really well with the controller. I don't really notice a difference. I'm regularly getting like 5 to 7 player kill streaks using the controller. It's a very well balanced game. I find the powers between heroes super fun. I find myself experimenting with all the heroes all the time. And I think this game really encourages that really fast, quick turnaround.
Yeah, it is a very fast-paced game, but we should also mention, like, what are the different game types and what it's like as this hero-based shooter. We don't see a lot of those in this genre. The last one we can think of that's most similar to this is Team Fortress 2, so you see a lot of the inspiration there. But it's always a 6 versus 6 online multiplayer. You can actually be matchmaking and get into a game where one person has dropped out and you might be 5-on-6 temporarily. But in my experience, it's always quick to matchmake and find new available players that just hop right into your game. So that's been pretty good so far. You don't see a lot of rage quitters, and if you do, there's someone that is immediately hopping in to replace them in the middle of your match. So the way it works is that you can play through 4 different game modes. There's Assault, Escort, and then a combination of the both, Assault, Escort, and Control. So they're all objective-based. Notably, there's no team deathmatch or a free-for-all game type. These are strictly modes that require a lot of teamwork and coordination. The strategy behind it, I find, is that starting a match with a well-balanced team of heroes that fill in very specialized roles is a huge factor in whether or not you win or lose any given match, I found. There's this meta piece there where you have to coordinate with people online, even if you're not playing with friends, with just completely random strangers. So there's a total of 21 characters, and let's talk about the different roles that we have. We have 4 different roles. Ryan, why don't you read them off?
Sure. The first one is offense. So these are characters who tend to be super quick and do a lot of damage very quickly, but they usually have low hit points. We have defensive characters. So these are characters that kind of are good at setting up barriers and creating choke points. They also can set up sentries or help trap the enemy team. Tank characters usually have kind of the most HP. Some of them do a lot of damage. Most of them do a little bit in the interest of being a little bit more defensive. And then finally, we have support characters, or the healing characters. There are only 4 of those in this game, but these are really, they don't do a lot of damage, but they generally tend to support the other character classes and can really turn the tide of battle very quickly if you have a good healer. And I find myself really enjoying all the character roles. What's interesting is that when you start from the hero select screen, if your team is not well balanced, the game will actually tell you why it's not well balanced and what characters you should maybe think about choosing in order to fix that imbalance. So, for example, if you don't have any healing characters, it'll pop up with a notification that says no support characters. Or if you have too many tanks or too many snipers or so on and so forth. And I think that's a really great feature to encourage people to kind of try characters that are outside their comfort zone, and also to try to pick a team that will kind of balance each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Right, and it's very different from a lot of multiplayer shooters in the sense that you can constantly switch between different heroes during the match. So if you die, you can immediately switch to a new hero. Even if you're alive and you're back at depending on the map, if you're back in your starting area, you can switch to a new hero right there on the spot. So that is a huge difference traditionally from a lot of other multiplayer games where you're just given the option to change your loadout. You're not, and you're switching between different weapons and, let's say, accessories like grenades, but not necessarily gaining or losing any new abilities. So each of these heroes have specialized abilities. Sort of like a MOBA. This game is definitely not a MOBA, but you do have active skill cooldowns. You do work towards an ultimate ability. It's a signature ability by each hero that usually grants a huge bonus, or it's an attack that does high damage, for instance. And the way you build to that ultimate ability is by gaining more experience throughout the match. So that's through kills, that's through capturing objectives, for example, or if you're in a support class, it would be healing or buffing your teammates as well. So let's talk about the heroes themselves. Ryan, what are some of your favorites specifically, and what roles do you tend to gravitate towards?
And my favorite 4 characters are Zenyatta, so that's the healer with the kind of like yoga orbs. He floats around. He does kind of a healing over time capability. He also has a damage debuff for enemy characters that he can throw out. And interestingly, he has a kind of like a charge shot weapon. If you hold the left trigger on the controller, you can kind of charge up your shots. And what's nice about that is it has this like semi-homing capability, which does a lot of damage for a healer. It's super surprising. I do the best when I play as Zenyatta. But other than that, I really enjoy also playing as Mei, who's kind of a specialist class. She's the ice character who can freeze and slow down characters. Her gun is mostly like a flamethrower, but with ice. She can also kind of create like an ice wall or like block herself in with ice to heal. Probably my favorite character overall is probably Reinhardt. He's the tank character with the hammer. He can kind of set up a mobile barrier for people to stand behind on your team, and you can also shoot through it if you're on the same team. And I just find him really fun to play. He's got a lot of health. He lasts a long time, so I often have my longest lifespans are with him. And then finally, Soldier 76. This is kind of the like Call of Duty character, for lack of a better term. He has an assault rifle. He has like a sprint. He has a rocket launcher, and then he also has like a very small area of effect heal. And if you're used to like first-person shooters like Call of Duty or Battlefield, this is probably the character you're going to gravitate towards the most. This is the character that I see most people playing, probably because there have been so many first-person shooters that play a lot like Soldier 76. So those are my favorite characters. Taylor, what about you?
I first started playing as Reaper, who I find to be one of the most accessible characters, very easy to understand his abilities and be successful with. He's a sort of cloaked Grim Reaper style character with dual shotguns. He's very effective at close to medium range. I just like the style and look of the character so much, but I find that he does not have a very high skill ceiling. You oftentimes have to really like flank and catch your enemy off guard to be really, really effective, because he does have a very good escape where he enters this sort of like shadow mode and floats around and remains invulnerable for a couple seconds. So it's a great way to either close the gap and get in close to your opponents to start shooting with, or you can use it as an escape. So I started off with him, and he is definitely an offensive character for those reasons. But I'm probably the best with D.Va, and this character is really cool, I think. She is this, has this like giant pink mecha that she's controlling. One of her starting abilities is that you can fly around in her mech suit to either close the gap to speed up along the ground, or fly higher up to, let's say, a higher point. But she also has like a very strong damage output. She is not a big of a damage sponge as the rest of the tank characters. In fact, as soon as your enemy starts shooting you and drains your hit points, at a certain point you actually have to eject out of the mech, and the game automatically does it for you. You don't have to manually do this. And then you're a very vulnerable character as herself, just running around with a very weak pistol. So, but her ultimate ability I really, really love. Once you build up towards it, you can actually eject out of the mech and self-destruct. And in some of these objective game types where you're trying to capture one specific stationary point, it's very effective at taking out the whole team all at once. So I also really like Bastion, is he a defensive character? I can't remember.
Yeah, he is a defensive character. He's that like turret tank thing, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of people don't necessarily use him as a defensive character. There were a lot of complaints during the beta that he was so overpowered, that he was a little bit game-breaking. And it was really funny watching the official Overwatch Twitter account, telling people, hey, here's how you counter him. So, there are effective strategies like snipers who can easily take him out. He's just a really good character, I think, overall, because he has a turret mode, which is very accurate. You remain stationary, but it also deals high damage. So if you're camping around a corner and your enemy's coming around, it's almost like an easy kill every time. He also has a self-heal as well. So he's very self-sustaining. He's a very popular character overall, I've seen in a lot of games. And last but not least, I do also love another tank character in addition to D.Va, which is Roadhog. He's this big-bellied biker guy with a gas mask on, but he has an ability like a hook that stuns and reins in your enemies. So if they're super far away, you bring him in close and kill them easily. Very effective when you're running around next to some of your teammates as they're stunned with that ability. Also has a self-heal, so He has high HP, and I also do really, really well with him, especially during those payload game types where you're actually having to escort something from one point to the next in order to win the match.
So this is an objective-based multiplayer game, and I know for the past couple of years we've been playing a lot of deathmatch-focused games. I personally like objective-style games. I excel at going for the objectives and not necessarily for kills, but do you like it being objective-based as opposed to straight deathmatch? Do you feel like there's a lot of teamwork happening in the matches that you've been experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. I generally do enjoy objective game types. If we're talking about Call of Duty, for example, I love to play Headquarters, Domination, for example, Capture the Flag. I always preferred those over Team Deathmatch. However, some people are going to get into this game and really question why Team Deathmatch isn't in here. And I think it was a deliberate move by Blizzard to say, hey, if we were to introduce Team Deathmatch in here, people would complain about balance issues between the heroes. I don't think the heroes have been designed to be self-sustaining, run-around, soldier-style characters. There are only a few that do that, and you already mentioned one of them, Soldier 76. So you can sort of tell that they were just going for these objective game types to really get that Team Fortress 2 Counter-Strike sort of audience.
Yeah, I'm finding the teamwork aspect of this probably to be the most important. Generally when my teams lose, it's because we don't have the right team balance or somebody's not pulling their weight. What's frustrating is that, so we talked about that kind of like notification that pops up on the hero select screen that your team is imbalanced. That doesn't really show up if you look at the scoreboard or just like the in the middle of the match, there isn't like a UI element that lets you know that there aren't enough, offensive characters, for example. And what I'm finding is that a lot of people are picking one hero in the beginning and kind of sticking with it the rest of the match. And that may be because they're the best with that character, and that's totally fine if that's the case. But the most effective teams are switching characters mid-match depending on the situation. So, for example, if you're on defense and you're finding that you're being pushed back quite a bit, it may be to your benefit to playing defensive characters, but probably most people will be playing, healers or characters like Soldier 76 or McCree, who are kind of more offense-based. Like, you have to kind of change your heroes depending on the situation, also taking into consideration of the balance, and most people aren't figuring that out. It's really, really, from what I've seen, that's kind of like a really fascinating aspect. I think I've seen maybe like 2 or 3 other people besides myself in matches switching characters.
Yeah, there are a lot of lone wolves out there. And since we're playing on different platforms, there is no cross-platform play, so Ryan and I are not playing together. So we're just being paired up with strangers on the internet, okay? And yes, I find a lot of lone wolves out there who, for whatever reason, will select an offensive character when they're on a team that's playing defense. If the game type, for example, on these escort missions, if you're on defense, you're trying to prevent this movable payload from getting from one point to the next. And as you kill the enemies on defense, that payload will slow down or come to a complete stop if they're all dead. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for these lone wolves to pick offensive characters that might have high damage output, but they're really vulnerable, they have low HP, and they're just dying way, way, way too often. So it's very important. I totally agree to be aware of those tool tips that the game is telling you about your team composition before your match starts. I believe it also happens if you're hot swapping in the middle of a match. It also tells you, you have too many snipers, or you have not enough offensive players, or whatever the situation is with your team. It will tell you directly during the match as well. So very helpful for beginners. There's a sort of a short learning curve here, which is very important with keeping an audience engaged in these multiplayer style shooters.
Taylor, do you feel like this game is an evolution of Team Fortress 2? Blizzard has this long history, like you said at the top of the show, where they take game ideas and they kind of spin them from other games' ideas and put a lot of polish on it. So, for example, StarCraft, that was originally kind of an evolution of Command and Conquer, which came before it.
And Warcraft, of course. They made those too.
Correct. And like World of Warcraft was kind of building on ideas that EverQuest had. But this is their first game in a while that has had really new characters and new ideas. Do you feel like this is better than Team Fortress 2? Do you feel like this is kind of the next step for multiplayer shooters? I asked this because, last year we talked about the very short shelf life of a lot of multiplayer video games like Evolve or Titanfall. And it's really a bummer when a community doesn't stick with something. But a lot of people play Team Fortress 2. Do you feel like a lot of people will stick to Overwatch like they did with TF2 a decade ago?
It's hard to tell. I certainly hope so. I'm personally invested in Overwatch. I'm having a great time playing with it. It's hard to tell if a community is going to be staying on for a while because it's very different from a lot of traditional shooters out there. But based on the reviews that we're seeing and the sort of reaction online is that it's positive all around. This is a very refreshing take on a genre that quite honestly, there's just too many games out there. There are too many shooters, and they're all trying to go after that Call of Duty audience. And to some extent, that's a good thing, and in other ways, it's really bad. And I just like the way that Blizzard took these inspirations, the really great parts of Team Fortress 2, they're class-based. Team Fortress 2 doesn't have named heroes. You have like the scout, the medic, the heavy. Those instantly describe what those roles are, but they aren't named characters. So they lack that sort of, that polished personality that Overwatch just absolutely oozes. And I want to get into sort of the art style about that game as well. I think that is also a big draw when it comes to shooters. We always see these military-based shooters, like I said, COD and Battlefield before, and they're sort of drab and really just steep themselves in realism. And Overwatch does the complete opposite. There's cartoony characters, anthropomorphized heroes as well. You have like these cyborgs. It takes place in the near future. I just like what they did, the direction they took with that art style. Very colorful and vivid. It's just very, very refreshing compared to a lot of other shooters out there.
Right. And also the music is also very nice and swelling. It has this kind of like orchestral, but at the same time, like Saturday morning cartoon feel. There are a lot of actually really cool sound cues. For example, when you're being shot, if you're wearing headphones, you can kind of tell positionally where you're being shot from. It's not just a visual cue. And the characters, the voice acting is super well. They have a lot of dialogue lines. Just for the fact that this is a multiplayer shooter where you expect to see repeated lines over and over and over again. Like every time you hear McCree say, "It's high noon," like that feels like it has real weight to it. It has this real like personal character thing. And I think what also helps this like cartoony art style and this really great music is that most matches tend to be like 10 to 12 minutes. It's very quick. It's very in and out. The matchmaking, on PC, I've had, I go between matches, maybe about 10 seconds between matches. It's really quick. I like the fact that the game times aren't very long. If you're losing, you shouldn't feel too bad because the next match will start up right away. That's a really great feeling. This is the kind of game where like, I haven't felt this great playing a game since like Mario Kart or GoldenEye on the N64. It just feels like these really great short burst sessions. And if you like sit down and play for like 2 hours, like there's a smile on your face the entire time because it's just, even when you're losing, you're having a great time with this game.
Yeah, very well said. But I have to say, I want to revisit something that you mentioned before, which was about the sound design in that game, which is really, really, really incredible, okay? You're playing with headphones on a PC. I'm actually playing on a surround sound system on the couch with a PS4. And you're right, that situational awareness where you can hear enemies' footsteps behind you to the side. You sort of hear these audio cues about characters using their abilities is incredibly helpful, and not a lot of developers pay close attention to this. When we play COD, for example, there's just so many noises and sound effects and voices that you hear at any given moment. It drowns out everything. It becomes noise all of a sudden. Whereas Overwatch, I think the sound design there really lends itself to giving you an advantage in battle, which I think is awesome. It really, really sounds absolutely amazing. I do want to touch on some of the things I don't like about Overwatch. One of the things that I find kind of unacceptable is that they have some cosmetic microtransactions in here. As you level up, as you gain experience by completing matches, you do gain loot boxes, and as soon as you open them, you get a couple different things. You can either unlock new skins for characters, which, to be honest, they look amazing on some of them. But you also unlock really, really, really stupid stuff, in my opinion, which is like spray paints, like tags that are barely used, maybe pre-match, and they're specific to each character. It's kind of weird. You can unlock new victory poses, which display for, I think, like all of 3 seconds after a match is over, so not very meaningful. And I'm trying to remember the final one that you unlock, but
it's like player icons, right?
That's right, yeah.
And it's always this grab bag of things. You can get repeats, which you can break down for, I think, 20% of the like credit. And also the microtransaction part of it, like, it seems really expensive to buy loot boxes. Like, if you really like Overwatch, which I expect that a lot of people will, you can go pretty hard at the microtransaction and spend a lot of money very quickly. And you can go all the way up to like a price package that's like 60. You can basically buy the game again just for like these cosmetic, for lack of a better term, this is basically the progression in the game. So these are like cosmetic unlocks that you're getting just by playing the game. So I don't see much of the incentive to spend the money on the loot boxes.
I mean, at the same time, you have games where you have microtransactions baked into there that give players advantages over others that don't buy into these games. The sort of pay-to-win model that a lot of mobile games will have, for example, that are multiplayer. That's not in here, so still, it's a little weird that you're paying full price for a game, depending on what platform you're buying it. You're paying anywhere from $40 to $60 here on launch week, right? And then you have this, like, it's on PS4, I believe it's $1 per loot box. I don't know if you buy more, you get a better value or what have you. I haven't explored it. I just find it a little bit gross that's still in there. And how randomized you are, you'll get. I've unlocked a lot of skins and these spray painted tags for characters I barely play as, and I'm like, really, isn't there some algorithm in here that like rewards me for getting some cosmetic stuff for the characters I actually do play? I don't know. Some of the other things I've also noticed right away when I played Overwatch is that the movement is a lot slower than we're used to in a lot of other multiplayer shooters. It's a lot more methodical. There are characters that are faster than others. There are specific heroes that do have sprints, like Soldier 76, for example. Genji, this sort of robotic ninja-style character. But overall, though, even at their fastest, you're still not moving in the same ways that you do in, like, a Call of Duty, for example. So big learning curve there if you're coming from that experience. What do you think, Ryan?
I actually don't think that the speed is that much of a problem for me. I think what's more of an issue is that the levels, don't have a lot of verticality. We have characters that can kind of climb walls and double jump, but what's interesting is that if you play a character that has that double jump or a fly ability, and then you suddenly switch to a character that doesn't, it's very jarring. I find myself trying to double jump as much as possible with some characters, and when I don't play as a character that can, it's like, why isn't this in here? This is like frustrating, and it just feels like some parts of the map are inaccessible to those characters. I actually don't find the movement speed that jarring for me. I expect when I play as Reinhardt that I'm going to be moving super slowly, and it's not much of an issue. And I also think that some of the level design, some of the maps are, we expect this kind of like symmetric, but also kind of interesting map design when we play multiplayer games. But I find that the maps are very well balanced. They're very interesting. It's not just this rote like point A to point B thing, specifically when we're talking about modes where all you're doing is attacking one point or trying to make it to bring the payload to this next checkpoint. The levels are great, and they plays well with the character's abilities and movement speed.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments so far about how it's very difficult to camp in Overwatch, which is a positive in my book. In case there are heroes that are trying to camp in one place, they're easily countered by specific heroes. So there is that layer of strategy there that a lot of other shooters just lack. I think what brings out the worst in some other shooters is that you do have terrible campers who only rely on sniping from a somewhat hidden location that's very difficult to attack. and counter. And Overwatch, I don't think has that issue. So that piece is a positive for the map design in Overwatch. And the other thing, and I've touched on this before, which was about the matchmaking. And it's always 6-on-6, but then you do have players that can leave at their leisure in the middle of a match. I haven't found that there's any real penalty for doing that. So you can jump in and jump out. You can take advantage of the quick queue times. For the console on PSN, I'm playing on PS4, right? It's the exact same thing. I've had the same experience that you have had, Ryan, which it's like 10 seconds between each maximum before I can jump into the next match. For those rage quitters out there, like, it's just, I wish there was like a penalty, like, okay, now your wait times are going to be longer, or you're going to get paired with other rage quitters all the time, which is something Blizzard has done in their other games, like Heroes of the Storm, for example.
Yeah, and I think that if you don't like objective-based game modes, or in fact, if you like other game modes, we said that there are really 4 game modes, but in actual reality, there are really only 2, right? You're either assaulting a thing or you're defending a thing. And what was interesting is that in the they have a mode in there right now that swaps out every week. It's like the brawl. And for launch week, this mode is a mode where every character is buffed, and it's basically a lot harder to kill people. And I don't find that very fun. During the beta, there was in that slot, there was a mode where basically it was random heroes. So every time you died, you switched to a random hero. And I found that super fun and very interesting to kind of like learn the characters that you don't normally pick. So for a $60 game to only really have 2 modes is kind of frustrating. And then to have the one mode that you would actually want and that was popular in the beta not be there as an option. There are custom games, but you can't matchmake in custom games. So, hopefully Blizzard has a good history of supporting its games on PC and on console. So hopefully they'll patch in some more stuff. Maybe there'll be more DLC down the road. But I hope to see more modes for this game because, frankly, it's very popular. I can see that people are talking about it online, and it probably is going to be with us for a long time. So hopefully there will be a little more nuance and a little more fleshed out multiplayer modes for this game.
We did list out the game types before, but we didn't really describe them. So we'll touch on them real quick. So Assault, you have one attacking team trying to capture 2 points, and the more heroes you have in a certain point, the faster you start to capture it. If you have offense and defense both at the same point, it will be contested, so the offense can't capture it until the defenders are all killed off. And the defending team, they're trying to stop them and trying to last until the time limit runs out for that match. Escort, you have an attacking team that's escorting this payload, this movable platform, to a delivery point before time runs out, and the defense is trying to prevent them from doing that. The more heroes you have around this payload on the attacking team, the faster the payload is moving throughout the map from on a direct rail, on a straight line to the finish. And then you have a combination of the assault and escort, another game mode where the attacking team has to try to capture the payload and then escort it, and then the defending team is trying to hold them back. And in fact, if you have enough defenders there, it'll actually push back the payload back to the start of the map. And then last but not least is Control, which is sort of this almost like a King of the Hill situation, but it's like a best of 3 series where both teams, they're both trying to attack the same point, and they're both trying to slowly capture the point so it reaches 100%. And again, the more heroes you have at that point, the faster that it gets there. So, yeah, you're right. Like, it's a mix between the offense and defense. There's no free-for-all in here. That brawl mode you were describing that's more chaotic, I think they call it arcade mode. You can do quick match right now. They do not have ranked play right now. They're calling it competitive play, and it is not currently in there. So if you're someone who's competitive, if you're into esports, and you're looking for high-level players to matchmake with, you're sort of out of luck unless you're running with a team that you're already partied up with. So you do have quick match there, unranked. You do have play versus AI, game full of bots. The enemy team, I should say, is full of bots. You cannot play with bot teammates. You also have your custom match, but unfortunately you cannot matchmake with that. And then that arcade mode that you described, that brawl style game where you have all these crazy effects like buffs, 200%, abilities, cooldowns are shorter, that sort of thing. So that's just more of like a fun grab bag, like play style there.
All right, Taylor, any final thoughts before we wrap the show up?
Well, I'm just really, really surprised that your experience on PC has been positive. With multiplayer shooters, it's kind of like this very Twitch-based, like high skill ceiling, right? And you're left in the dust if you're trying to use a controller. I'm very shocked to hear you say that, which is the main reason why I decided to go with a PS4. I'm very uncomfortable playing with mouse and keyboard when it comes to shooters, so I wanted to play against other people that were on my same level, did not have that advantage of the Twitch fine control of a mouse when they're aiming around. So I'm quite impressed with that.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why I picked the PC version over the console versions, despite the fact that I knew you would be playing the console versions, and most of my friends will be playing the console versions, is that with Team Fortress 2, Valve did not really do a great job of supporting other versions of that game that were on console. And I know this is Blizzard; we're talking about completely different companies here. But I was a little concerned that the PC version was just going to continue to be supported, and the console versions would just kind of languish out on the vine. And Blizzard doesn't usually do that. Diablo 3 on consoles has been super supported. I think the only feature it doesn't have is that season mode. But other than that, it's pretty much the same version as it is on PC. And I just think that the player base is going to be super receptive on PC. But I think if you're playing this game on PS4 or Xbox One, you're still going to have a great time. You're still going to have probably the best time if you have like a squad of friends that you can team up with, and you don't have to worry about internet randoms. But I think this game is for me is best played in really short bursts. Unlike other multiplayer shooters where I feel like it's like a slog to get through a bunch of menus and loadouts and to like matchmake into games. And then I have to deal with a bunch of people like shouting racist or sexist epithets at me. Like with Overwatch, I'm having such a more positive experience. I think I've played with like one dude who wasn't very happy with his team, and another player was just like, dude, chill out. And like, this is the kind of game that, like, because of its art style, because of its like very easygoing nature, because of its like easy control scheme, because it has very friendly characters and music and art style, like all this whole package all together just makes it a very like warm, inviting, like short burst style kind of game that we haven't really seen in quite some time. So, I imagine that people who played Splatoon last year really felt like that game was a very new, refreshing thing for the shooter market. And I feel very similarly about Overwatch. I feel like this is like the shot in the arm that this genre badly needed. And honestly, this game is going to make me want to play other multiplayer shooters, like that are coming out, like Doom. Uncharted 4 has a multiplayer that I'm sure is going to languish now that Overwatch is out. But it's just made me so much appreciate this style of game a lot more.
You're right. It's that sort of approachable style about this game. It's that short learning curve. And I think that's a super, super big positive about this game, about how inviting it is to new players who traditionally may not have enjoyed Call of Duty or other shooters out there. I agree with you that the community so far has been pretty warm. It hasn't been toxic. And I think Blizzard has had a good reputation about dealing with toxic players in their community. I've had very positive experiences with Heroes of the Storm, even as far back as Diablo 3, Diablo 2. I think they have excellent moderators on their staff that really monitor player experience. And I think they're going to continue that with Overwatch so far. Even before it was released, during the beta, they said, hey, if you're cheating on PC in any certain way, if you're going to be permanently banned. There's no sort of suspension period at all. And that's a very hard line that I think the online community is going to embrace and keep people playing. Where you have, for example, in contrast, like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2, you have a ton of cheaters on there that get away with a ton and really ruin it for the players who are just trying to play it the way it was intended by the developers. So, I have to applaud Blizzard and say congratulations to them for the overwhelmingly positive response they've heard about their new game out this week. And they have two brand new fans in us, I would say. And let me just wrap this up by saying I will be posting my formal review on Overwatch within the next week. So be on the lookout for that. And as soon as it's posted, I'll update the link in the show notes for this podcast episode. For a more detailed breakdown of the positives and negatives and our impressions about this game. Ryan, any final thoughts you want to say?
I don't know. I just want the show to end so I can play more Overwatch.
All right. Man, they should hire you for PR. All right. That's it. If you liked our show, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. Please let us know what you think about our show. It would be really helpful to hear your feedback.
You can also listen to us on Google Play Music, TuneIn, Clamor, or our website, which is 1pvs2p.com, or search for us using your favorite podcast app.
Also, like our Facebook page so you're up to date on when we post our new episodes, and follow us on Twitter at 1pvs2p_podcast. We're very active there. Make sure to follow us on both of those sites.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will be back next week with a regular show. Be sure to subscribe to our show for upcoming E3 coverage during the whole month of June.